Before there was Kim Possible or Spy Kids, a quirky Fox sitcom featured a teenage mailman's son turned secret agent, guest starring Twisted Sisters Dee Snider as an exorcist, punk icon Wendy O. Williams as a bikini-clad terrorist, and Watergate conspirator G. Gordon Liddy, all while nearly killing Fox's fledgling network. Here are 15 shocking facts about TV's weirdest teen spy show. Fact 1. David Spade turned down the lead role. Before Jonathan Ward became the teenage spy courier Beans Baxter, the role was actually offered to a young comedian named David Spade, who was just starting his career in Hollywood. At the time, Spade was unknown and struggling to break into the entertainment industry, making this a potentially career-defining opportunity. However, his agents strongly advised him against taking the part, believing the show's quirky premise about a teenager who becomes a secret agent after his mailman father gets kidnapped was too risky and wouldn't help his career. Spade listened to their advice and turned down the role, a decision he would later come to regret. In interviews years after he became famous on Saturday Night Live and in movies like Tommy Boy, Spade admitted that passing on Beans Baxter was a mistake he still thinks about. While the show only lasted 1 season and 17 episodes, it could have given him valuable television experience and early exposure that might have accelerated his path to stardom. The irony is that Spade built his career on playing sarcastic, quirky characters, which would have fit perfectly with the offbeat tone of the new adventures of Beans Baxter. Instead, Jonathan Ward got the role and won a Young Artist Award for his performance, while Spade had to wait a few more years before his big break arrived. Fact 2. The show nearly destroyed Fox Network. The New Adventures of Beans Baxter holds the dubious distinction of almost killing the Fox network before it really got started. When Fox launched in 1987, it was a risky venture trying to compete with the 3 established networks, ABC, NBC, and CBS. The network desperately needed its first lineup of shows to succeed, but Beans Baxter became a serious problem almost immediately. Creator Savage Steve Holland later revealed that local Fox affiliates across the country were furious about the show, with many station managers complaining that it was too weird, too bizarre, and too confusing for mainstream audiences. The show's strange mix of teen comedy and spy parody, combined with surreal humor and bizarre guest stars, didn't fit what advertisers or station managers expected from primetime television. Some television historians and industry insiders have claimed that Beans Baxter nearly destroyed Fox's credibility with affiliates during that crucial first year when the network was trying to prove it could compete. Station managers threatened to drop Fox programming entirely if they had to keep airing shows this strange. The situation got so bad that Fox executives seriously considered pulling the plug early, but they faced a different problem. They had nothing ready to replace it with, so they kept it on the air despite the complaints, hoping something better would come along soon. Fact 3. Legendary jazz trumpeter provided the theme. The New Adventures of Beans Baxter featured one of the most distinctive and energetic theme songs in 1980s television history, performed by none other than legendary jazz trumpeter Maynard Ferguson. Ferguson was already famous in the music world for his incredible ability to hit stratospheric high notes that seemed impossible for any human to reach. And he had previously gained mainstream recognition by performing the iconic theme song for Rocky, titled Gonna Fly Now. The Beans Baxter theme was composed by Joseph Vitarelli, but it was Ferguson's brilliant trumpet performance that gave the opening credits their memorable, high-energy sound that perfectly captured the show's blend of action and comedy. Ferguson's playing style was unique because he could sustain notes in the highest register of the trumpet longer than almost any other player, creating a sound that was both thrilling and instantly recognizable. For a low-budget Fox sitcom about a teenage spy, having a musician of Ferguson's caliber was an unexpected touch of class that elevated the production. The trumpet-heavy theme became one of the most memorable aspects of the show, with its upbeat, brassy sound signaling to viewers that they were about to watch something fun and adventurous, even if the show itself was often incredibly weird and didn't quite know what it wanted to be. Fact 4. The villain was Future, that 70s show dad. The main villain of The New Adventures of Beans Baxter was a terrorist leader named Mr. Sue, and he was played by Kurtwood Smith, an actor who would later become famous for 2 very different iconic roles. Smith portrayed Mr. Sue as the head of the evil organization UGLI, playing the character with just the right amount of menace mixed with absurdity that the show's tone required. This role came right before Smith landed the part of the sadistic villain Clarence Boddicker in RoboCop, which was released the same year in 1987 and became a huge hit. That role showcased Smith's ability to play truly terrifying bad guys. But most people today remember him best for playing Red Foreman, the grumpy, no-nonsense father on That 70s Show, which ran from 1998 to 2006. The contrast between these roles is remarkable because Mr. Sue required Smith to be a comedic villain in a surreal spy parody. Clarence Boddicker was a genuinely frightening psychopath, and Red Foreman was a lovable curmudgeon who threatened to put his foot in people's asses. Watching old episodes of Beans Baxter today is a strange experience because you're seeing the future Red Foreman playing a terrorist named Sue, which creates an unintentionally funny disconnect for anyone familiar with Smith's later work. Fact 5. Punk rock legend played a terrorist, one of the most bizarre casting choices in the New Adventures of Beans. Baxter was Wendy O. Williams, the legendary and controversial lead singer of the punk band The Plasmatics, who had a recurring role as a terrorist operative. Williams was not your typical television actress. She was famous for performing concerts wearing nothing but electrical tape and shaving cream, destroying cars with sledgehammers on stage, and wielding a chainsaw to cut guitars in half during performances while sporting a mohawk hairstyle. Her stage persona was violent, sexual, and completely outrageous, making her one of the most shocking figures in punk rock history. On Beans Baxter, she played a character who worked for the evil organization UGLI, appearing in multiple episodes as a bikini-wearing enemy agent who sometimes helped Beans and sometimes fought against him, depending on the episode. The show never fully explained her character's motivations or loyalty, which fit with the show's generally chaotic approach to storytelling. Williams brought genuine intensity to her role, though she wasn't a trained actress and her line delivery could be stiff at times. For a family-friendly Fox sitcom, having someone as controversial as Williams in a recurring role was a bold choice that perfectly captured the show's commitment to being as weird as possible. Tragically, Williams took her own life in 1998 after struggling with depression and financial problems. Fact 6. Watergate criminal guest starred as himself. In one of the strangest casting decisions in television history, The New Adventures of Beans Baxter featured G. Gordon Liddy as a guest star, playing a spy trying to seduce Beans' mother. Liddy was not an actor, but a real-life criminal who had been convicted for his role in the Watergate scandal that brought down President Richard Nixon in the 1970s. He had masterminded the break-in at the Democratic National Committee headquarters and served over 4 years in federal prison before his sentence was commuted. By the time Beans Baxter aired in 1987, Liddy had reinvented himself as a public figure, writing books and giving speeches about his experiences. On the show, he played an operative for UGLI who was assigned to romance Beans' mother as part of some convoluted scheme. And in a meta-twist, his real-life wife Frances played his on-screen wife in the episode. The casting was bizarre on multiple levels because Liddy had no acting experience. His involvement added a strange layer of real-world political infamy to a goofy teen sitcom. And the show never really explained why they thought audiences would accept a convicted Watergate conspirator as a comedic romantic interest. Liddy's stiff delivery and lack of comic timing made his scenes awkward to watch, but his appearance perfectly exemplified the show's willingness to cast anyone interesting regardless of whether it made sense. Fact 7. Dee Snider battled Satan on prime time. The New Adventures of Beans Baxter featured one of the most insane episodes in 1980s television when Dee Snider, the iconic frontman of the heavy metal band Twisted Sister, guest starred as a rock and roll exorcist fighting demons. Snider, famous for hits like We're Not Gonna Take It and for his testimony before the Senate about music censorship, played a character named Dr. Snider in an episode that parodied the 1980s panic about backward masking in rock music. The episode's plot involved teenagers who had been turned into evil demons and then transformed into accordion-playing lounge lizards through the power of backward messages hidden in music. A concept so absurd it's hard to believe it actually aired on network television. Dr. Snider arrived to battle these forces of darkness using his rock and roll powers, essentially playing an exaggerated version of himself as a heroic figure defending teenagers from supernatural threats. The episode was a direct satire of the moral panic that gripped America during the 80s, when parents and religious groups claimed that rock bands were putting satanic messages in their songs that could only be heard when played backwards. Snider had been at the center of this controversy in real life, making his appearance both timely and hilariously ironic. The episode perfectly captured Beans Baxter's chaotic energy and willingness to tackle bizarre subject matter that other shows wouldn't touch. Fact 8. The show was one of Fox's first 8 programs. When the Fox network launched in October of 1986, it didn't have enough programming to compete with the established networks, so it started with just a few shows airing on weekends. By the time The New Adventures of Beans Baxter premiered in July of 1987, Fox was still in its infancy and desperately trying to establish itself as a legitimate fourth network. Beans Baxter was among the first 8 original programs that Fox used to build its primetime lineup, airing alongside shows that would have very different levels of success. The lineup included 21 Jump Street, which became a hit, and launched Johnny Depp's career, Married with Children, which became a controversial ratings success and ran for 11 seasons, and The Tracy Ullman Show, which introduced the world to The Simpsons through animated shorts. Compared to these eventual successes, Beans Baxter was the oddball failure that didn't fit with what audiences wanted. While Jump Street offered serious teen drama, Married with Children provided edgy family comedy, and Ullman delivered sketch comedy, Beans Baxter was too strange and too hard to categorize, which made it difficult for Fox to market or for audiences to embrace. Being part of this historic first wave of Fox programming should have been an honor, but instead, Beans Baxter became a cautionary tale about the risks of being too weird too soon. Fact 9. The evil organization had the best acronym. The villains in The New Adventures of Beans. Baxter worked for a terrorist organization with one of the most ridiculous names in television history, UGLI, which stood for Underground Government Liberation Intergroup. The name was clearly chosen because it spelled out the word ugly, which was the kind of obvious joke that perfectly captured the show's approach to humor. What made the organization even more absurd was that it was led by a villain named Mr. Sue, which sounds more like someone you'd meet at a parent-teacher conference than a dangerous international terrorist. Mr. Sue was always dressed impeccably in suits and spoke in a calm, measured tone, creating a funny contrast between his professional demeanor and his completely ridiculous name. The show never explained what UGLI's actual goals were beyond generic world domination and causing chaos, and their schemes were always bizarre and unnecessarily complicated. The combination of a villain named Sue leading an organization called UGLI created an intentionally silly tone that signaled to viewers not to take anything too seriously. This was typical of creator Savage Steve Holland's style, which favored absurdist humor over coherent plotting. While other spy shows of the era like MacGyver and The A-Team tried to make their villains threatening, Beans Baxter fully committed to making its antagonists as ridiculous as possible, which worked when the show was at its best, but made it hard for the show to generate any real tension. Fact 10. It was filmed in Canada, pretending to be DC. Despite being set in Washington, D.C., where Beans lived with his mother after his mailman father was kidnapped by Ugly, The New Adventures of Beans Baxter was actually filmed entirely in Vancouver, British Columbia, which created some hilarious continuity problems. Vancouver was a popular filming location in the 1980s because it was cheaper than shooting in the United States, and the Canadian dollar exchange rate made it even more cost-effective for American productions. The show tried to disguise the location by avoiding wide shots that would reveal distinctive Vancouver landmarks, but they weren't always successful. In at least one episode, viewers with sharp eyes noticed Toronto's famous CN Tower visible in the background of a scene that was supposed to take place in Washington, D.C., which was geographically impossible since Toronto is over 500 miles away from D.C., and the CN Tower is one of the most recognizable structures in North America. This kind of mistake was common in low-budget television production of the era, when shows hoped viewers either wouldn't notice or wouldn't care about such details. The use of Vancouver meant that all the outdoor scenes looked noticeably different from what Washington, D.C. actually looks like, with mountains visible in distant shots and vegetation that didn't match the East Coast. For a show that was already struggling with believability, these production shortcuts made it even harder for audiences to suspend their disbelief. Fact 11. The new in the title makes no sense. One of the most peculiar things about the new adventures of Beans Baxter is right there in the title. The word new implies there were old adventures that viewers missed, but there never were any previous adventures of Beans Baxter anywhere. There was no earlier show, no book series, no comic strip, nothing that would justify calling these adventures new, as opposed to just calling it The Adventures of Beans Baxter. This bizarre naming choice has never been officially explained, but it appears to have been creator Savage Steve Holland simply being playful and absurdist with the title itself. Holland had a reputation for quirky, offbeat humor, having previously directed the cult comedy films Better Off Dead and One. Crazy Summer, both of which featured surreal elements and jokes that didn't always make logical sense. By adding new to the title when nothing old existed, Holland was essentially making the title itself part of the joke, suggesting this was a reboot of something that never existed in the first place. It's possible he was also parodying shows like The New Avengers or The New Leave It to Beaver, which were actual reboots of earlier series and used new to distinguish themselves. Whatever the reason, the unnecessary new in the title perfectly captured the show's commitment to being weird for the sake of being weird, even when that weirdness made no practical sense and probably confused potential viewers who wondered what they had missed. Fact 12. The lead actor won a Young Artist Award. Despite the new adventures of Beans, Baxter being canceled after just one season and never finding a significant audience, the show's lead actor Jonathan Ward received recognition for his performance when he won a Young Artist Award in 1988. Ward took home the prize for Best Young Actor starring in a new television comedy series, beating out other young performers in the competitive category. The Young Artist Awards, also known as the Youth in Film Awards, were established to recognize excellence in young performers under the age of 21 in film, television, theater, and music. Ward's win was significant because it meant that industry professionals and judges recognized his talent and commitment to the role, even though the show itself was struggling in the ratings and being criticized for being too strange. As Beans Baxter, Ward had to carry almost every scene, delivering rapid-fire dialogue, performing physical comedy, and making the audience care about a character who was constantly caught up in absurd spy situations. His performance required real skill because he had to play the material seriously enough that viewers would stay invested in the story, while also leaning into the comedy when the show went completely off the rails. Unfortunately, the Young Artist Award didn't translate into long-term career success for Ward, who continued acting but never became a major star, appearing in smaller roles in films and television throughout the 1990s and 2000s. Fact 13. The creator also animated The Whammy. Before Savage Steve Holland created the new adventures of Beans Baxter, he had already made his mark in television by creating and animating one of the most beloved and recognizable characters in game show history, The Whammy from Press Your Luck. The Whammy was a mischievous red cartoon devil creature that appeared on the game board when contestants landed on the wrong space, taking away all their winnings while performing various humorous animations. Holland's Whammy animations were creative and varied, featuring the character in different costumes and situations, from dressed as a pirate to riding a motorcycle, and each appearance was accompanied by the creature's signature evil laugh. The Whammy became so iconic that it essentially defined Press Your Luck and is still remembered fondly decades later, even inspiring a revival series called Whamageddon. Holland's animation work on Press Your Luck demonstrated his talent for creating memorable, quirky characters with distinct personalities, which he would later try to translate into live-action television with Beans Baxter. However, what worked in short animated segments for a game show proved much harder to sustain across 22-minute sitcom episodes. Holland's sensibility was perfect for brief bursts of surreal humor, but stretching that style into a serialized narrative with character development and ongoing plots was a challenge he never quite solved with Beans Baxter, though the show certainly bore his distinctive stamp of weird, off-kilter humor throughout its brief run. Fact 14. Fox kept it on air only because they had nothing else. The New Adventures of Beans Baxter should have been canceled much earlier than it was, but Fox kept it on the air for a reason that had nothing to do with quality or ratings. They literally had nothing ready to replace it with. In interviews years later, creator Savage Steve Holland revealed the embarrassing truth about why his show stayed on television despite poor viewership numbers and complaints from local Fox affiliates. The Fox network was so new in 1987 that it didn't have a deep bench of shows waiting in development, and their production pipeline was nearly empty. When Beans Baxter started failing, Fox executives wanted to pull the plug immediately, but canceling the show would have left a hole in their schedule that they couldn't fill. This was a unique problem that only existed because Fox was still figuring out how to be a television network and hadn't yet established the development process that would allow them to have replacement shows ready to go. So rather than going dark during that time slot or admitting defeat by airing reruns, Fox reluctantly kept Beans Baxter on the air while they scrambled to develop something new. This meant the show became a placeholder, something to fill time until Fox could find or create a better option. It's a humiliating way for any television show to survive, knowing you're only on the air because canceling you would be more inconvenient than keeping you around. Fact 15. The show ended without resolving its main plot. When Fox finally canceled The New Adventures of Beans Baxter after 17 episodes, they did so with no warning and no opportunity for the creators to wrap up the show's storylines, leaving viewers with one of the most frustrating unresolved cliffhangers in television history. The entire premise of the show was built around Beans' father, a mailman who was kidnapped by the terrorist organization UGLI in the first episode, forcing Beans to become a courier for a counterintelligence agency to help find him. This central plot was supposed to drive the entire series, with Beans getting closer to discovering his father's location while having various spy adventures along the way. However, the show got sidetracked by bizarre standalone episodes featuring guest stars like Snider and Wendy O, and the search for Beans' father became background noise rather than the primary focus. When cancellation came, none of this was resolved. Beans never found his father. The mystery of why Ugly kidnapped a mailman was never explained, and viewers who had invested time in the show were left with no closure whatsoever. In the era before streaming and before shows regularly received proper finale episodes, this kind of abrupt cancellation was common, but it was particularly frustrating for Beans Baxter because the missing father was literally the reason the show existed. The unresolved ending has become part of the show's legacy, with fans still discussing what might have happened if the series had been allowed to continue.